Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Welcome back. You'll notice the audio sounds different. I apologize. For the last few videos, I've been experimenting with a better microphone setup, and I've listened back to some of those videos, and the audio was for crap, quite frankly. And I don't want to turn you away just because it's difficult to listen to me yammering on. So I'm back to the camera mic, which is quite good actually. This Lumix camera has a very good built-in microphone. So I'm going to stay with that until I get some better hardware to see if I can't get improved audio. But I'm through experimenting from now, so you're welcome. Okay, let's continue with the Tripitaka master, Shan-Wu-Wei. This will be part 3. And now, again, Nichiren is hammering home how important it is to realize the difference between the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha and those of these distorted views that over centuries meandered as the Buddhism moved into China and through Korea and into Japan, and different teachers, for political reasons, as we've already discussed, added their own annotations and decided to drop some of the teachings and adopt others as their central point. This misleads people. It doesn't give them, as Shakyamuni exhorted us, to study all of the Buddhist sutras and commentaries and so on and so forth. The 12 divisions, as Nichiren pointed out. So he continues in this vein as we pick up where we left off. Shakyamuni, the world-honored one, who is our father and mother, and is endowed with the 3 virtues of sovereign, teacher, and parent, is the very one who encourages us, the people driven out by all other Buddhas, saying, "I am the only person who can rescue and protect others." End quote. The debt of gratitude we owe him is deeper than the ocean, weightier than the earth, vaster than the sky. Though we were to pluck out our 2 eyes and place them before him as an offering until there were more eyes there than stars in the sky, though we were to strip off our skin and spread them on and on and on, all of these physical offerings, he's really trying to drive home how the debt owed, what he's really saying, I hope you understand, is that his teaching is the original teaching. It is the core of the teachings. It is his teaching, the Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching. So for sects and groups to follow other Buddhas, which are just emanations or thought experiments of Shakyamuni, is nonsensical, right? It's distorted. This is where these words come from. So we could never repay a fraction of the debt we owe to the Buddha. I kind of skipped over some of the gruesome offerings he's got on tap here. But the scholars of our time cling to distorted views, even though they may be wise men who have mastered all the 80,000 doctrines of Buddhism and committed to memory the 12 divisions of the scriptures, and who strictly observe the Mahayana and Hinayana precepts. If they turn their backs on this principle, then one should know that they cannot avoid falling into the evil paths. So even though they've read and studied all these things, as I was alluding to before, they've simply decided on their own that they're going to narrow the teachings for whatever reason, political gain, make it easier for them to have authoritarian hierarchies in their groups so that they alone are the ones that those people follow, rather than, you see, this is the dangerous thing about studying Buddhism and Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings in their entirety. as Nichiren points out, you are your own leader. It's all on you to practice and discover your own Buddha enlightenment. No one controls that for you other than you. So for people who want to run organizations or to control a populace, to govern through their own aegis, this teaching kind of messes them up, because I joked with a friend of mine one time. I was talking about Buddhism and just Buddhist concepts in general. I wasn't really labeling it Buddhism, but I was using Buddhist teachings to discuss a matter with him. He's a very good friend of mine, and he quite seriously said, you should start your own church. Because not as an insult, but because he felt inspired by a lot of the ideas that I was saying to him, and I laughed, saying to him that I would have the only church in history where I would be telling the practitioners or the people who are interested that they shouldn't be there. So, because this is the nature of Buddhism. The Sangha is all of us, and it is a transfer of experience, aka knowledge, that each of us experiences and share with others, because we all have a different experience of life, and through those different experiences we get intuitions and insights and aha moments, right? So this is why you can't practice alone, and yet it is your practice alone that will lead you to enlightenment. But as we understand in the later Mahayana, in the Lotus Sutra, in the chapters about the preacher of the teachings, we learn that it is only through helping others that we truly discover the depth of our own enlightenment. So, as an example of what I mean, let us look at the Tripitaka master Shan-Wu-Wei, the founder of the True Word School in China. So now, after all that, we finally get to Shan-Wu-Wei. He was a son of King Buddhaseed, the monarch of the kingdom of Udayana in India. Shakyamuni Buddha left his father's palace at the age of 19 to take up the religious life, but this Tripitaka master abdicated the throne at the age of 13, and thereafter traveled through the 70 states of India, journeying 90,000 ri on foot and acquainting himself with the various sutras, treatises, and schools of Buddhism. In a kingdom in northern India, he stood at the foot of the stupa erected by King Golden Grains, gazed up at the heavens, and uttered meditations, whereupon there appeared in midair the womb realm mandala, with the thus come one Mahavarachana seated in its center. So this was obviously Shan-Wu-Wei's epiphany in Buddhism, was in reading the Mahavarachana sutras. Shan-Wu-Wei, out of his compassion, determined to spread the knowledge of this teaching to remote regions, and thereupon traveled to China, where he transmitted the secret doctrines to Emperor Xuanzong. At the time of the great drought, he offered up meditations for rain, and rain fell from the sky within 3 days. This Tripitaka master was thoroughly familiar with the seed characters representing the 1,200 and more honored ones, their august forms, and their samayas. Today, and I know these are a lot of words in here, and there are footnotes, and you can research each one of them. Today, all the followers of the True Word School belonging to Toji and the other True Word temples in Japan look upon themselves as disciples of the Tripitaka master Shan-Wu-Wei. Here's the authoritarian system showing itself, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, we all have leaders in life. But if the leaders are the object of our practice, then we're missing the point. Leaders in our lives are people who help expand our understanding. That's fine. In the way of Buddhism, all of us play a leadership role, because we lead one another. So leadership in itself isn't a bad thing, but what one is being led to is the crux of the matter, right? Buddhism's always about intent, ultimately. But the time came when Tripitaka Master suddenly died. Thereupon a number of wardens of hell appeared, bound him with 7 iron cords, and led him off to the palace of Yama, the Lord of Hell. This was a very strange thing to happen. So again, this is expedient means, right? Using visual allegories to illustrate a point. For what fault did he deserve to be censured in this way? What did he do wrong? In the life he had just lived, he might perhaps have committed some of the 10 evil acts, but surely he had not been guilty of any of the 5 cardinal sins. And as for his past existences, in view of the fact that he had become the ruler of a great kingdom, he must have strictly observed the 10 good precepts and dutifully served 500 Buddhas. What fault then could he have committed? Right, so he's using the talk of the day to situate Shan-Wu-Wei, and with all of his great good acts and intentions, why did he not live a fruitful, complete life? Moreover, at the age of 13, he had voluntarily relinquished his position as king and entered the religious life. His aspiration for enlightenment was unequaled throughout the entire land of Jambudvipa. Surely such virtue should have canceled out any major or minor offenses he might have committed in his present or previous lives. In addition, he had made a thorough study of all the various sutras, treatises, and schools that were propagated in India at the time, and that fact, too, should have served to atone for any possible faults. In addition to all this, the esoteric true word doctrines are different from the other teachings of Buddhism. They declare that though one may make no more than a single mudra with the hands, or utter no more than a single mantra with the mouth, even the gravest offenses accumulated throughout the 3 existences of past, present, and future will thereby, without fail, be eradicated. Moreover, they say that all the offenses and karmic hindrances that one may have created during the space of innumerable kodas of kalpas will all be extinguished the moment one looks upon the esoteric mandalas. How much more should this be true, therefore, in the case of the Tripitaka master Shan-Wu-Wei, who had memorized all the mudras and mantras pertaining to the 1,200 and more honored ones, who had understood as clearly as if it were reflected in a mirror the practice of contemplation for attaining Buddhahood in one's present form, and who, when he underwent the ceremony of anointment before the diamond realm and womb realm mandalas, had become in effect Mahavarachana, the king of enlightenment himself. Why then should such a man be summoned before King Yama and subjected to censure? Good question, right? I, Nichiren, had resolved to embrace the teaching that is supreme amongst the 2 divisions of Buddhism, the exoteric and the esoteric, and that allows us to free ourselves from the sufferings of birth and death with the greatest ease. Therefore, I acquainted myself with the esoteric true word doctrines in general, and made inquiries concerning this matter of Shan-Wu-Wei. But no one was able to give a satisfactory answer to the question I have posed above. If this man could not escape the evil paths, then how could any of the true word teachers of our time, let alone the priests and lay believers who had performed no more than a single mudra or uttered no more than a single mantra, hope to avoid them? Having examined the matter in detail, I concluded that there were 2 errors for which Shan-Wu-Wei was summoned before King Yama for censure. First of all, The Mahavajracana Sutra not only is inferior to the Lotus Sutra, but cannot even compare to the Nirvana, Flower Garland, or Wisdom Sutra. And yet Shan-Wu-Wei maintained that it was superior to the Lotus Sutra, thus committing the error of slandering the correct teaching. Second, although the Thus Come One Mahavajracana is an emanation of Shakyamuni Buddha, Shan-Wu-Wei held to the bias that view that Mahavajracana is in fact superior to Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings. Yikes. This is constantly the error that's pointed out in all the other schools. They make the mistake of thinking that the creation of the Creator, I should use other words because in the West that means something different. Shakyamuni Buddha is the initial, he is Buddhism. His teaching is Buddhism. It's his enlightenment that we learn in order to find our own path to that same enlightenment. So to use one of his examples, Shakyamuni's examples, as our intent and our goal is to miss the point. Do you follow? The offense of such slanders is so grave that no one who commits them could avoid falling into the evil paths, even though he should practice the teachings of the 1200 and more honored ones over a period of innumerable kalpas. You're not going to the same place. You're using one example of one type of enlightenment. That's why if you're on your path and you've been studying, 50, 60 years, and you feel you've experienced awakening many, many times, and you're still a human in this life, and I study under you, and you show me everything that you believe you've learned, you're showing me your path to your enlightenment. And if I follow that path to the letter, I'm not going to end up with my Buddha nature, my enlightenment. I will learn, I will gain a great deal, but I will only be learning about your enlightenment. This is what Shakyamuni used these other Buddhas and other stories to indicate different paths to enlightenment. So that in fact, not to follow his own path, but to illustrate that there are many, many paths to this thing we call awakening or enlightenment, something that can't be discussed other than by analogies and indications to help others find their own Buddha nature and their own enlightenment. It's kind of difficult to understand because we're humans, and we're accustomed to categorically finding this is this and no other thing is this. And in Buddhism, you're trying to teach something that's universal and individual to each and every entity. Their path to it, when they get to it, whatever that categorized thing is, we call it enlightenment or awakening, it is experienced through one's own experience of our human experience. And as similar as they may be one to another, they are individually ours. Remember the fountain analogy. So, like the fountain analogy, if we only took one of those people, we would understand fountains a great deal, but we would never understand completely the fountain that was original to the teaching unless we find it ourselves. Then with all our filters, our mental filters, our karmic filters, however you want to enumerate it, we will not have experienced that fountain until that is what we do. So it's a subtle point, but it's a profound point. And, there's a lot of words here trying to say that, mine in addition. So I hope it's becoming clear to you. Shan-Wu-Wei committed these errors the difficulty for which is very difficult to escape, and therefore, although he performed the mudras and mantras of the various honored ones, it was to no avail. Because when he merely recited those words from the simile and parable chapter of the second volume of the Lotus Sutra that read, quote, "Now this threefold world is all my, Shakyamuni's, domain, and the living beings in it are all my children. Now this place is beset by many pains and trials. I am the only person who can rescue and protect others," end quote. He escaped from the iron cords that bound him. Shan-Wu-Wei. But that as it may, the true word teachers who came after Shan-Wu-Wei have all maintained that Mahavajrayana Sutra not only is superior to the various other sutras, but surpasses even the Lotus Sutra. In addition, there were other persons who have declared that the Lotus Sutra is also inferior to the Flower Garland Sutra. Though these groups differ in what they maintain, they are alike in being guilty of slandering the correct teachings. In other words, they're not practicing Buddhism correctly. They're an offshoot. They have a bow and an arrow, but their aim is off, so they'll never hit the target. The Tripitaka master, Shan-Wu-Wei, held the prejudiced opinion that both the Lotus Sutra and the Mahavajrayana should be regarded with great respect, since they agree in the profound principles that they embody, but that because the Lotus Sutra mentions nothing about mudras and mantras, it is inferior to the Mahavajrayana Sutra. See, this is a case of attachments, isn't it? Shan-Wu-Wei liked the Mahavajrayana Sutra because it gave him physical tools to practice. And the Lotus Sutra does no such thing, other than its own teaching in its own right as the ultimate teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. It doesn't give you all these complex tools and methodologies. It's easy to get. We're human. We like that complexity. Even though we say we like things simple, if we want something simple, we have to make it complex in order to make the simple thing worthwhile. It's just the way we are. So the same thing with Shan-Wu-Wei. He understood all the teachings, but he needed to have something tangibly difficult to hand to people to say, okay, now you need to get past this in order to get there. He created an obstacle. Now, you may be saying, yeah, but what is the Daimoku? The Daimoku is a direct invocation of your own Buddha nature. That's different. That's not a tool to get there. That's a visual, an invocation of your own Buddha nature. It requires an understanding of at least the Lotus Sutra, and if you try to understand the Lotus Sutra, you're going to need to read more sutras to understand what the Lotus Sutra is talking about. This is the nature of study of Buddhism, the 80,000 doctrines. Okay, so let me continue. Sorry, I get sidetracked. Should be regarded with great respect. It is inferior to the Mahavajrayana Sutra. The true word teachers who came after him, moreover, were of the opinion that even with respect to the important principles expressed, the Lotus Sutra is inferior to the Mahavajrayana Sutra, to say nothing of the matter of mudras and mantras. So you see, over time, an opinion turns into fact. Thus, they went much farther in their slander of the correct teaching, piling up offense upon offense. It is impossible to believe that they can long avoid being censured by the by the King Yama and consigned to the sufferings of hell. Indeed, they will immediately call down upon themselves the flames of the Avicii hell. The Mahavajrayana Sutra does not originally contain any mention of the profound principle of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, or in a thought moment. I should change that. This principle is confined to the Lotus Sutra alone. Now, that's an important principle. I've talked about the 3,000 realms before, because it is an actual description in words of the mechanism of our experience of our Buddha nature and all our natures, all our life experience. The Nidana, the 12-link causal chain, is a description of energies coalescing into thingness, suchnesses of which we are built physically and mentally. But the 3,000 realms is that same concept karmically. In other words, our experience, our experiential entity. And through that, we then confront and amalgamate our life with our Buddha nature, because it's built into that. So it's a more evolved, more comprehensive ideology, method of understanding how we come about as sentient beings. And only in the Lotus Sutra is it described in a way that we understand that, yes, our Buddha nature is inherent, but this is how we experience it moment to moment. It's rather profound, and it takes a while. In fact, when I tried to talk about it in a series, I think it's in a playlist of Origin of Life or 3,000 Realms, I think I flip-flopped on the label. It took several videos for me to attempt an understanding. And I hope those help you, and please always, as I say, comment, because I've been doing this for years. So it may be that I have a better, clearer understanding now, or at least better rhetoric that might be more useful if I didn't succeed in indicating the 3,000 realms in those videos. So Nichiren is pointing out that only in the Lotus Sutra is that profound experiential teaching there to help you, again, refine your own path to your Buddha nature. The Mahavajrayana Sutra has nothing of the sort. Even though in general it talks about similar things, those descriptions, those analytics tools are missing. And fundamentally, once you understand not only the 3,000 realms, but the other teachings within the Lotus Sutra, it becomes obvious that mudras and mantras and all these other things were all provisional teachings. That, again, Shakyamuni was trying to teach Buddhism so that anybody, no matter what their capacity, whether you understand the 3,000 realms or not, you can awaken your own Buddha life, your own Buddha nature, your own Buddha mind. Okay? So, Nichiren then just makes that tool more obvious. He says, look, this is what he's talking about, because every chapter is labeled Myoho Renge Kyo. The entire sutra is called Myoho Renge Kyo. Buddha is saying Myoho Renge Kyo. That's it. That's how you get there. So all Nichiren said was, Myoho Renge Kyo is the law, the way, the universal intonation of your own Buddhahood. So he put Namu in front of it, because he's saying if you dedicate yourself to that path, you will unfailingly awaken your own Buddha nature. So Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. That's where that comes from, right? So he creates a Gohonzon with that mandala and that mantra that's universal, so that everyone can easily have a reference to that entirety of teaching. Okay? This principle is confined to the Lotus Sutra alone, but the Tripitaka master Shan-Wu-Wei proceeded to steal and appropriate this profound principle that the great teacher Tendai had put forth on the basis of his reading of the Lotus Sutra, incorporating it into his own interpretation of the Mahavajracana Sutra. He then asserted that the mudras and mantras of the Mahavajracana Sutra, which were originally expounded merely to lend adornment to the Lotus Sutra, were the very elements that make the Mahavajracana Sutra superior to the Lotus. Shan-Wu-Wei was putting forth a distorted view when he stated that the Lotus and the Mahavajracana Sutras were equal in principle, and he was likewise stating an erroneous view when he claimed that the Mahavajracana Sutra was superior by reason of its mantras and mudras, reminding mudras are hand positions. Okay. Anyway, you see them all the time on statues of bodhisattvas and Buddhas and so on and so forth. This is like the case of a foolish and lowly man who looks upon his 6 sense organs as his personal treasures, though in fact they belong to his Lord. Consequently, he is led into all manner of erroneous conduct. We should keep this example in mind when interpreting the sutras, because the doctrines set forth in inferior sutras serve only to adorn the sutra that is truly superior. So that's kind of an esoteric little mention there, but he's talking to people of the day because in those days you were owned. So if you were basically a slave, so you were owned, and if you acted independently, then you were killed. Okay, so this is what his example is if you're a slave and you think that your hands and your eyes and your feet are your own, you're highly mistaken. We don't live in those days anymore, but you get the point, right? Nichiren, where are we now? Nichiren was a resident of Seichoji on Mount Kiyosumi in Tojo village in the province of Awa. From the time I was a small child, I prayed to Bodhisattva Space Treasury, asking that I might become the wisest person in Japan. The Bodhisattva transformed himself into a venerable priest before my very eyes and bestowed upon me a jewel of wisdom as bright as the morning star. No doubt, as a result, I was able to gain a great mastery of the principal teachings of the 8 older schools of Buddhism in Japan, as well as those of the Zen and Nembutsu schools. So he studied all of them. During the 16 or 17 years since the 5th year, 1253, or so, of the Kensho era until the present, the 7th year of the Bunei era, 1270, I have leveled many criticisms against the Zen and Nembutsu schools. For this reason, the scholars of those schools have risen up like hornets and flocked together like clouds, though, as a matter of fact, their arguments can be demolished with hardly more than a word or two. Even the scholars of the Tendai and True Word schools, losing sight of the principles laid down by their own schools concerning which teachings are to be adopted and which discarded, have come to hold opinions identical to those of the Zen or Nembutsu. Every time I do that, I think page-turning karma. Because their lay followers hold to such beliefs, they have thought it best to lend support to these schools and their erroneous views by declaring that the Tendai and True Word teachings are the same as those of the Nembutsu and Zen schools. As a result, they joined the others in an attempt to refute me. But, although they might appear to refute me, in fact, they are simply destroying their own Tendai and True Word teachings. It is a shameful, shameful thing they are doing. The fact that I have, in this way, been able to discern the errors of the various sutras, treatises, and schools is due to the benefit of Bodhisattva Space Treasury and is owed to my former teacher, Dozenbo. Even a turtle, we are told, knows how to repay a debt of gratitude. So how much more should human beings? To repay the debt that I owe to my former teacher, Dolzen-bo, I desired to spread the teachings of the Buddha on Mount Kiyosumi, and led my teacher to enlightenment. But he is a rather ignorant man, and in addition, he is a believer in the Nembutsu, so I did not see how he could escape the three evil paths. Moreover, he is not the kind of person who would listen to my words of instruction. Nevertheless, in the first year of Bun-ei era, 1264, on the 14th day of the 11th month, I met with him at the priest's lodgings of Hanabusa in Saijo. At that time, he said to me, quote, I have neither wisdom nor any hope for advancement to important position. I am an old man with no desire for fame, and I claim no eminent priest of Nembutsu as my teacher. But because this practice has become so widespread in our time, I simply repeat, like others, the words Namu Amida Butsu. In addition, though it was not my idea originally, I have had occasion to fashion 5 images of Amida Buddha. This perhaps is due to some karmic habit that I have formed in a past existence. Do you suppose that as a result of these faults, I will fall into hell? At that time, I certainly had no thought of quarreling with him. But because of the earlier incident with the lay priest Tojo Simon Renchi, I had not seen my teacher for more than 10 years. And thus it was in a way as though he had become estranged and were at odds. I thought that the proper and courteous thing would be to reason with him in mild terms, to speak in a gentle manner. On the other hand, when it comes to the realm of birth and death, neither young nor old know what fate awaits them. And it occurred to me that I might never have again have another opportunity to meet with him. I had already warned Dozenbo's elder brother, the priest Dojibo Gisho, that he was destined to fall into the hell of incessant suffering if he did not change his ways, and they say that his death was far worse than what he had hoped. When I considered that my teacher, Dozenbo, might meet a similar fate, I was filled with pity for him, and therefore made up my mind to speak to him in very strong terms. I explained to him that by making 5 images of Amida Buddha, he was condemning himself to fall 5 times into the hell of incessant suffering. The reason for this, I told him, was that the Lotus Sutra, wherein the Buddha says that he is now, quote, honestly discarding expedient means, end quote, states that the thus come one Shakyamuni is our father, while Amida Buddha is our uncle. Anyone who would... So this is important. When he says honestly discarding expedient means in the Lotus Sutra, he is in fact saying everything that I've taught before has been provisional. It's been expedient to get you to think the right way, to start experimenting in your own mind with these elaborate descriptions of how to unearth, how to reveal your own profound Buddha mind. But now in the Lotus Sutra, I'm done with that. I'm telling you directly, this is how you do it. This is the importance of the Lotus Sutra. You can't miss it. Anyone who would fashion no less than 5 images of his uncle and make offerings to them, and yet not fashion a single image of his own father, how could he be regarded as anything but unfilial? So this is the whole family structure. In the West, we don't observe this anymore, but there was a time, and there still are in some circles, a deep respect for the elders of the tribe, the elders of your family. Right? We don't just discount them, but these days we don't have much of that. And this is what Nichiren is using, is that family structure as a way to understand the proper reverence for the various teachings. You can't throw yourself into the provisional and expedient works and expect to attain the depth and the profundity of your own Buddha mind and life, right? You're only going to learn these provisional things. You're not following, or your intent is not correctly aimed. Even hunters, here we go, aim. Even hunters in the mountains or fishermen who cannot tell east from west and do not perform a single pious act are guilty of less offenses than such a person. Nowadays, those who seek the way no doubt hope for better existence in future lives, yet they cast aside the Lotus Sutra and Shakyamuni Buddha while never failing even for an instant to revere Amida Buddha and call upon his name. What kind of behavior is this? Though they may appear to the eye to be pious people, I do not see how they can escape the charge of rejecting their own parent and devoting themselves to a stranger. Now, he's not an uncle anymore, he's a stranger. Completely evil person, on the other hand, has never given his allegiance to a Buddhist teaching at all, and so has not committed the fault of rejecting Shakyamuni Buddha. Therefore, if the proper circumstances should arise, he might very well in time come to take resolute mind of determination in Shakyamuni. Those who follow the erroneous doctrines of Shandao, Honen, and the Buddhist scholars of our time, making Amida Buddha their object of devotion and dedicating themselves entirely to the practice of calling upon his name, I do not believe that they will ever renounce their erroneous views and give their allegiance to Shakyamuni Buddha and the Lotus Sutra, even though lifetime after lifetime throughout countless kalpas should pass. Accordingly, the Nirvana Sutra, which was preached in the grove of sal trees just before Shakyamuni Buddha's passing, states that there will appear frightful persons whose offenses are graver than the 10 evil acts or the 5 cardinal sins, ichantikas, or persons of incorrigible disbelief, and those who slander the correct teaching. We also read that there are such persons will be found nowhere else but among the company of wise men, who observe the 250 precepts, wrap their bodies in the 3 robes of Buddhist monks, and carry a begging bowl. I explained all of this in detail to Dozenbo at the time of our meeting, though it did not appear that he completely understood, nor did the other persons present on that occasion seem to understand. Later, however, I received word that Dozenbo had come to take resolute mind in the Lotus Sutra. I concluded that he must have renounced his earlier distorted views and had hence become a person of sound belief, a thought that filled me with joy. When I also heard that he had fashioned an image of Shakyamuni Buddha, I could not find words to express my emotion. It may seem as though I spoke to him very harshly at the time of our meeting, but I simply explained things as they are set forth in the Lotus Sutra, and that is no doubt why he has now taken such action. It is said that good advice grates on the ear, just as good medicine tastes bitter. And on that note, I'm going to end part 3, and we'll be able to, well, let's see. We're at 43 minutes. Can we take a couple more paragraphs and we'll complete this Gosho? No need to rush it. I'll just make a short one for part 4. I think that's a good place to stop. Good medicine, great advice grates on the ear, and good medicine always tastes bitter. It's interesting. This is what Nichiren would call shakabuku. So he was illustrating there the difference between shoju and shakabuku. Sometimes you want to guide people slowly through their misinterpretations, but this guy's advanced in years and been doing this a long time, and it's no longer time for shoju. He's just not getting it. So you need to put your foot down and go, look, this is the truth. This is the way it works. And this would be shakabuku. This is the breaking of erroneous thoughts and beliefs. So that he just illustrated it with his previous teacher. A very compassionate thing to do. Just like leading me to where my bookmark is. Thank you. There it is. All right. So, Shan-Wu-Wei, quite a go-show. Again, talking about how it's easy to be misled by people with good intention, but their aim is not accurate. So always, you will always find your way if you remind yourself, I have to read all of the teachings. Pick a word, pick a term, as in something that you're reading in the Lotus Sutra or some other sutra, and go, let me do a deep dive into that. It will take you to the other sutras, because all of Buddhism is a great net of teachings that's amount to the Lotus Sutra. They will all take you to the Lotus Sutra at some point. But you need to find your own way there, right? Some things will grate on your ear, and it won't be until later that you'll get an aha moment, and that very thing that grated on your ear will suddenly be super reasonable, and you'll end up going, ah, man, that's now that I get that, that's like all I want to talk about. And that's what the people around you need to hear. They need to see that discovery in you. They need to see those insights in you. You need to see them for yourself, and you need to share them with others. This is the practice of Buddhism. This is all Shakyamuni ever taught. So to get stuck into any one little zone, it's antithetical to that, isn't it? That's counter to the entirety of the teaching. And that's what Nichiren is saying here. Please don't get stuck. In fact, welcome it if you get stuck. Just reason in your mind that you are stuck. And use that as impetus, as inspiration to dig deeper until you're unstuck. The whole of Buddhist teachings should seem like a vast open universe, like looking into a night sky and realizing how many stars are there. And remember, some of those stars you're only seeing the light from, they no longer exist. They're provisional in a way. Okay? So, with that, thank you so much for listening. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. May you stay healthy and enjoy your practice. Make it an adventure. It will never cease to surprise you. Okay? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. See you in the next one.